I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees in the Village of River Woods for December 18th. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody this evening. Wish everybody happy holidays. So I'll probably forget by the end of the evening we have such a long agenda. Could I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Chamberlain.
Here.
Trustee Ford.
Here.
Trustee Goldstein. Trustee Haber. Trustee Hollander.
Here.
Trustee Jamerson.
Here.
President Morris.
Here, we have a quorum. First item of business is approval of minutes. As the final agenda notes, the minutes for the financial workshop, we're still working on those because no way to abbreviate some of the references to accounts, etc. So we need to work on that a little bit. So I would like a motion to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2018 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Minutes to the executive session, I think you've all seen. The original copy you got, I believe there's just the one change. I recommended that we change the word mimic to reflect. And so no substantive change. If you feel comfortable with the minutes, we need to approve them in open session. If we need to discuss them, we'll have to do that in executive session. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or request to have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Just for the record, so that everyone knows, we approved the minutes from the executive session, but by approving them, all we've done is say they are correct. We are not authorizing release at this time. Reports, village ecologist is not here, village treasurer.
You have two reports in your packet. The first is the cash report showing our cash holdings. There's a marginal, just a marginal change. We increased a bit, and most of that is due to the reinvestment of the maturity. And you also have the statement of revenues and expenses with a note that we have, as approved at a prior meeting, we did purchase the police vehicle. But nevertheless, we are well ahead of our estimated budget for this year. So if there are no questions, I'd like to also add that we did have a meeting on the 10th, as I reported, and we had gone through some of the accounts. I think we're a step closer to having much more efficient management of cash. We're going to move to close a couple of superfluous savings accounts. We are also going to have maturities go directly into the investment account rather than first to the checking account and then transfer back to the investment account. We are looking at closing another bank account after some bonds mature at U.S. Bank, and generally keeping up to date with J.P. Morgan and continuing to benefit from that investment account. So we're a little bit closer. We do need to update some authorized signers on the accounts and work on keeping track of our cash balance and our checking account on a weekly basis to make sure that we have adequate funds in that account, but no more than, we targeted $800,000, no more than $800,000 so that we can remain as fully invested as possible.
And that's well above the bank's limit for us.
Right.
So
Right.
our own desire is to make sure that we have positive cash at all times with keep us from having any fees. Are there any questions from the treasurer liaison? Yes, sir.
So, I'm sorry. So, do you know what the minimum is
from having
In-time
fees?
compensating balances for
Yeah.
services, it's lower than that, I think it's probably about 250. But 800 really works with our estimated cash projections and inflows of revenues and outflows of expenses.
Okay, just seems like a lot of money.
It does sound like a lot of money, but when you look at the estimated cash expenses and the inflows, in order to remain a comfortable balance, in order that we don't have anything slip through the cracks, we don't check cash on a daily basis. We just simply don't. And so a weekly or bi-monthly checking of balances makes more sense for us.
Can I just say, I'm, no.
You're thinking too, so.
Well, it just seems that,
We could do a cash sweep.
well, that would be excellent. Let's do that, but they kind of quit doing that a while back. Most of them. It just seems that, I just can't believe we spend that much money on a daily or even a weekly basis, so we can keep that much cash in the bank.
It's a very conservative estimate. It's a heck of a lot more than it's a heck of a lot less, I should say.
Oh, I
That
realize
was-
it's
yeah,
much less, and
yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
We're pulling it down, and until we're able to more tightly manage, that's the comfortable conservative number that we worked with Bob on that, and again, the cash projections that we did were the budget you saw, the financial workshop. So we don't come up short or have to do a transfer list. So again, we may learn over time that we can reduce that 800 to a lower number, but at this point, it's baby steps.
I get it.
Yeah, no, I
I would-
understand what you're saying.
I would get, if this was a business and this was my checking account,
believe me,
I would get rid of
understand.
I would get rid of my bookkeeper if we had to keep $800,000 in the bank just to keep everybody
Believe me,
happy.
I understand what you're saying, but it's
No,
also,
I get it.
the connection between the checking account and the investment account is not automatic.
No, I know, and neither is ours, so.
Oh, okay. All right.
We did talk about what
I get
was
it.
on,
I
and we thought to be err on the conservative side, we can always lower it later.
As we get better in budgeting and watching our finances.
Experience.
Exactly, we will.
Yes,
probably
Thank
do that. Thanks.
comment. I get it, yeah. Any other questions that I might be able to answer for you or pass on? Thank you.
Engineers report? No. Okay, Tupelo Honey, our community services director.
Continue to get calls periodically about the Cassidy property in Arrowwood. And invariably leads to tennis for profit. And that can't happen for our zoning requirements. Just not for profit, family only, done family only. And these deals aren't happening because of this. Our backflow preventer program for monitoring these annually, make sure the testing is done at over 99% compliance, that would work. And then lastly, our business license inspection, got 5 new applications. You remember restaurants require a business license, and Rubini Green also does by ordinance. Those inspections should be starting shortly, the annual inspection. And that's it.
Any questions for the Director of Community Services? All right, zoning board of appeals did not meet, planning commission did not meet, and is meeting on the
First slide.
No, they're wanting to move it back due to the holidays, so they've got to get a new date, apparently they haven't agreed on it yet. At least that we know.
So the third is canceled for the moment to be determined.
That is correct. I think it's probably moved back a week, but at this point, they're not planning on going ahead on the third. Since we had nasty emails from some people that don't even live in river woods. Okay, police report?
police activity is in board packets and also on the screen behind the mayor. On December 13th, we did have a bomb threat that was emailed to a business in the shops of Riverwoods. As that was coming in, we found out that several neighboring towns were getting similar threats at their businesses. And as we investigated further, we came to find that it's happening all over the country. So sure, we're sorry about that. But we were affected by it. On December 16th, DeKalb County Sheriff's Police served an arrest warrant for us for a subject who picked up a car from a resident in Riverwoods to restore it. And the resident did pay him to restore the car, and when we finally took the car back, it was in worse condition. And when we sent it out, and the motor was replaced by a much cheaper motor. So we obtained a warrant, and he was charged with felony theft. And that's all I have.
Henry?
Yeah, I actually looked at the numbers. And on the
I'm glad people are looking at it.
You're not supposed to say that out loud.
well,
It
there's
was
a lot of numbers.
inside us.
On the ordinance violations, I noticed that last year the numbers only reflect about 25% of the year. But we're approximately 350 year to date, and there were 40 for 25% of the year. So I'm wondering if the significant increase, almost 300, 400%, is that due to something particular?
Well, I think officers have a better, after the year end, the officers had a better understanding of how to write those tickets and what we can write them for. It was a learning experience. And one of them is in the room, soon-to-be Sergeant Fussenruder, who leads the department on those tickets. And he's just found that there's a lot of violations that he can write, because we can write certain traffic offenses, just not moving offenses. So you can't write speeding, but you can write no headlights, you can write cell phones.
As an ordinance.
Pardon me?
As an ordinance.
What? Not an ordinance violation, yeah.
So, but the other thing, Henry, is that we didn't start doing that.
I know.
No, he's saying we're
I
right.
think it's only 25%.
Yeah, we're right here at a much faster pace now than we were back then. Yeah.
Cheryl, you have a question?
I also write the numbers. I noticed we had over 300 burglar alarms, and I'm wondering how much of that is a false alarm?
As far as I know, for this year, all 200 false alarms.
And so I know we charge a fee. Do we charge an additional fee if there are numerous, or more than a certain number to the same residence throughout the year?
So the first, I don't remember the actual fines.
That's okay.
I don't remember the actual fines, but the first three we don't charge. Then there's a fine for the fourth one, and then there's a higher fine for the fifth one, and I think it goes up one more time after that. So I just don't know off the top of my head what the fines are. Does anybody remember what the fines are?
So basically what I'm interested in is if our department is having to make repeated calls to the residents, if essentially the fines that we're charging them are starting to cover the extra time that we spent, because over 200 seems like a lot.
Well, a couple of things we've done, and actually alarms are down. Everybody has to register their alarm now for the last few years. And since we've been doing that, we reduced the number of false alarms we've been getting. Also, we don't have that many multiple repeat offenders. A lot of those are just one-offs. So the vast majority are one-offs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, then, village attorney's report.
We had a discussion with the Lake County Department of Transportation this week. It's not on the agenda, I don't have to bring it up now. But just to let you know, we did ask the department to consider what they might be prepared to offer the village for the southeast corner of Deerfield and Milwaukee. If we could consider a governmental agreement, if they really were still that interested in acquiring that for common storage. And I guess it's probably going to take them a while to get back to us on that. But
Just in Bidden's that we had heard back and forth whether or not that property would be sufficient for all the common storage west of the bridge, and they said, according to their studies, it is sufficient to meet all of their needs when you have to be divided between the two properties. Whether or not they decide to do that, I don't know, but it is sufficient in and of itself.
Okay, any questions for the village attorney? Let me follow on to that. At that meeting, they again changed what the standard is for how much they would be willing to reimburse or able to reimburse for bike path, sidewalk, or whatever, up and down port line. The 4% only goes for a quote reasonable distance, which is Arrowwood or maybe a little farther. We still might be able to get it for 20% of list price, so to speak, which is better than 100%, but there's a big difference between 20% and 4%. So we're still looking at this, talking about other things, so we're not giving up on it altogether, but it's gone back and forth several times, and there's so many different criteria. I don't know the one they're getting straight, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows last time we said 4%, and that isn't necessarily going to happen.
Well, I have a third item then, since we're discussing that. The subject had come up about allowing a U-turn going south on Milwaukee, so you can make a U-turn coming back north on Milwaukee, at Deerfield, which would allow access to the commercial centers there. We had heard from the state, because it was only 2 lanes, that there wasn't sufficient room to put a sign saying U-turn permitted, although it would be legal, just not signed and encouraged. The county has said that they would be positively disposed to adding a temporary 3rd lane adjacent to the property. So what you would have is coming west on Deerfield, there's going to be a dedicated right turn lane. It will now, assuming this goes through, there will be a temporary lane that will receive that right-hand turn traffic, which will then give the minimum 35 feet, which would allow the state to then put in a sign saying U-turn permitted, which would, to a great extent, resolve some of the concerns we have regarding access to that area. It's yet to be seen that that lane is going to go in, although they did seem that they didn't have any objection to it, and that the state will agree that that does meet their requirement. They said that the lane would meet the requirement for the state.
It's interesting because as I drive by there, and Pat's probably noticed it, where they have relocated all of the utilities, the traffic signals, the traffic signal controller, is about right where that lane needs to be. So when they redo that intersection, you're going to have to relocate everything they just got to putting in on the northeast corner. The way it looks to me.
Probably not unlikely. They are telling us they are not going to have to totally replace the bridge, though, apparently, but it's only 25 years old. And they widen it and extend it to sides. It depends on the footings and things, but I think all of us said, why did they do all that work and put in a new bridge and not contemplate widening of Deerfield Road? Because that's been talked about as long as I've been here, so it's about 30 years or so. So there seems to be a lot of not forward thinking there as to where they're going. So
Between the county and the state also, they did agree to put a sign at westbound Deerfield at Milwaukee saying right turners must yield to U-turners at Milwaukee. So that should help a little also.
right, because people are making it is legal, unlike what some of us learned in driver's ed back in Maxwell's Model Ts that we were driving, but they are legal now. It's just said the state will put up a sign saying it's legal unless there's a receiving bank. On the Flatwoods project, we haven't done a tremendous amount in the last week. I know Cheryl's been going, well, Cheryl has been, I said we, I'm excluding you. Cheryl's been doing a lot. Tomorrow, we're going to be taking a field trip down to Olympia Fields, where there is a oak hickory woodland that I met the executive director at a comment at a reception 2 weeks ago. That sounds a great deal like what we've been talking about, larger scale, but very much a natural play area made from more natural things. So we want to go down and see what it looks like and how their programs work. So we figure at least we'll go down and take a look at that. Cheryl and I will be going along with Mike Clayton. So we'll take a look at that. I know Cheryl has been exchanging emails with the landscape architect. So Cheryl, let me turn it over to you at this point.
Okay. So first of all, let me make clear that this is not my project per se, but I'm the one who's trying to move it along faster so that we have more time for resident input. So what has been happening is that, as I reported last time, we had a subcommittee of Trustee Goldstein, the mayor, Mr. Clayton, and myself, get together so that we could figure out what the basic elements would look like or could look like. And since that time, the landscape architect has come up with a rendering, which is a summary of our discussion, along with a neutral type description of each one of those elements. In addition, Mr. Clayton put together an introduction for us, and what I really need now is for anybody else who has this, Mr. Mayor, to comment. And then what I would like to do is then send it out to the trustees and say, okay, essentially these are going to be the pictures and the descriptions that we're going to use for our survey. Would you like to comment? Is there anything we forgot? Is there something that you would like to change? And then we did hire MindMixer. At that point, I'd like to work with MindMixer. They assigned someone to us, and they will help us to formulate our survey and help us along with some wording. And by the way, the reason we decided to go with MindMixer is so we checked. So there's SurveyMonkey, the least expensive, but it really wasn't robust enough for us. MindMixer, which for a one-time project, $3,500. And then MetroQuest, which looked interesting, but a one-time project was $15,000. So we thought for our first foray into this, the lesser expensive one seemed at least good enough. And if we find it's inadequate, then we can always check out the more robust one.
Let me add to that too, that not only was it obviously much less expensive, which is important, but frankly, looking at some of the materials presented from Metro, quote, I think it was.
MetroQuest.
And their methodology was more controlled, and we believe that the MindMixer has a more open discussion and is more likely to get us a better feel for the community. The other one looks like it's more of a, you can ask your questions, but we're really helping you shape opinion while you're doing it.
Right. If anyone's ever done one of the CMAP surveys, MetroQuest does theirs. So that's an example. And it's mostly larger villages or larger organizations that use that methodology. And then one other piece to that, we've had some discussion as to whether or not talking about cost in any way should be part of this survey. So you might want to think about that too. So I would like to see this the draft of this go out to the trustees soon so that they can see at least the base plan for the survey in comment. Because I really would like to have it be not only as neutral as possible, but include all of the different ideas that we anticipate we might have, and we know we have had from residents already.
Yes, and I would like to again thank Trustee Chamberlain because she did say she's not supposed to be running this, it's not her project per se, but she's really done a great deal of the work.
Whose project is?
Well, it's the community's project, and it's just, as I say, I don't know that there's any one sponsor for this. We all know we need to do something here.
Oh, I just thought that maybe there's a point person that, you know.
Well, at this point,
easier, right?
depending on your definition of point person, if it's who's doing the most work, it's Cheryl. If who's theoretically in charge, it's me. I don't. I would say,
No, thank
we could nominate Trustee Hager and Trustee Goldstein,
Let's
since they're not here, but.
No, I actually have a question about, you're going out to Olympia Fields to look at the playground.
Yes.
And one of the things I know that when we hired the landscape architect who did the Deerfield work, is the Olympia Fields playground, number one, is it more about natural materials and so forth? And secondly, is it ADA compliant?
Yes, to both, as it was described to me, but again, I'm sitting next to somebody who was there to get an award for that, as we were for our stewardship of the woods here, so we're going to hear what's a very favorable description of it we'll need to see. She also said it was installed by Eagle Scouts, so I find that very interesting too, but there's a whole lot of parts to it, so there's a lot of exploring to do here. This may be one of these, it sounds too good to be true things, but we gotta go take a look at it as far as I'm concerned. I'm only relating what was told to me. I too am skeptical, but, and we'd have to make sure whatever it was acceptable to our underwriters too, so we'll take care of all of that, and it has to be ADA compliant.
Right, well, that's what our landscape rules. And I would just say, I think the cost should be part of any survey. I mean, if we're spending village money, yes.
Okay, any other questions on that? And again, thanks Cheryl, but tonight's Cheryl Chamberlain night, because I don't know how much there is to add to the wine and cheese, but I know you've done some work on that in the area as well, so if you would, please.
Well, I am pleased to report that Daphne has volunteered to work on this with me, so yay. And we have set a date, unless someone knows of conflict. February 28th, it's a Friday, we're thinking 5 to 7 p.m. And Daphne is helping draft an invitation so that we can get something in the Village Voice as soon as possible. But as we had said, we're going to try all of our different avenues of communication and see what works. We are also checking into village businesses for possibly any food or drink donations, or maybe at a discounted cost. All of our business, all of our grocery stores, etc. I'm also going to check into different possibilities for music. I'll check the free possibilities first. And then one other idea that I was thinking of, we had, we've been talking about granting, and one of the ideas I was thinking of is if we could get T-shirts for all of the trustees with our logo on it, we could wear them for the event. What do you all think about that?
I'd wear it.
I see some faces that don't look terribly receptive.
You can wear logos outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can wear it.
Or hats or something, but
ideas or additional ideas, certainly taking them.
What, do you have a theme for the get-together, or are we gonna have the campus rollout? Are we gonna have the campus rollout, are we celebrating a village landmark, are we celebrating the branding, rolling out the branding?
So, I talked to people about
Is
this,
there a
and,
reason?
okay, sorry, for you to meet and greet with your neighbors, getting to know your neighbors.
I think I mentioned at the last board meeting or 2 board meetings ago that if we're going to have a village event, we need to be able to take advantage of that event. And I do think, I don't know how set that date is, but if it's going to be close to something where we can roll out something that involves the whole village, such as Flathead Project, or whatever its name is going to be, or the grading event, I think that it should be done. It's an opportunity that we wouldn't, I don't think we ought to miss.
I totally agree. I think the branding in and of itself and having more people exposed to it will be good, but that doesn't mean we can't possibly combine something else.
Right, I think that as far as exhibits or having some items with logos on it would be great. As far as an actual presentation, I got a negative response to that for everyone I asked about it.
I would just say that I think it's a great idea to have just a gathering so that the people in the village can meet each other. I think that's huge, especially from different areas. So if we can combine it with something, that's great, but I don't think we should force that because I'd love to see this happen on a more regular basis, maybe semi-annually. And I don't think we're going to have that many things rolling out on a semi-annual basis. So I think that it's really nice to just have people come out and meet each other and enjoy the company as opposed to having hit over the head with something.
Sure, because you said, you were saying that people had a problem with the presentation, but what if we just have some boards up and people there?
Oh, I think it's totally fine if we want to have information available, some boards up. Oh, absolutely. And I would love to see if we have, I would love to see us have the information that we'll have for the survey for the campus plan and the Flatwood Center up on boards. I think that would be great. I think it's just the actual formal presentation that people are interested in.
I didn't mean that, I meant
I see.
to have some information for people coming there.
A reason,
Yeah, great.
there's, I mean, a reason, I mean, it's nice to say, oh, let's have an open house, but, okay, what's the date of incorporation, I mean, it's snow season still,
Well,
but the
maybe we'll be celebrating the
I
news
don't
in
know,
the
just
playoffs.
I still think it's just a great idea to get people together. And we need a reason.
I don't, well, as I
We're
said,
giving wine and cheese, and if we're giving wine, I don't think we want to lose their tongues too much. Who knows what, so.
And you've
I
got
just think it's,
right
I think it's
outside,
the
right?
right idea to just have a gathering and have something to use the facility for.
So when I was asking about, publicizing a particular event, some people said that they would be afraid that they were going to have to volunteer or something, so they might back up. So that's why I personally, I think it would work better if we had information here or even things to celebrate that we could talk about, and we can all have talking points. But I think that as it stands right now, I think I would prefer it's just an excerpt unless, most of us did.
well, they don't have to volunteer to come. We might get the volunteer to leave, but we don't have that problem. Okay, moving forward, the last item on the information agenda is the schedule of future board meetings, which you all have now. It's posted on the webpage, etc. So if you're not going to make any of these meetings for whatever reason, please let us know. Moving forward then, are there any visitors wishing to address the board? Yes, Yes, sir.
I just have a couple of quick questions.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, my name is Russ Romanelli, and I'm a resident of Thorngate community. First question, earlier on, Bruce, you were talking about using the piece of property on Milwaukee and Deerfield for some kind of storage, I thought you were saying cob storage? I couldn't get what you were saying.
Stormwater compensation, and the idea was the county could pay us to be able to use it, et cetera. It's stormwater compensation.
Okay, I didn't have that word.
For the road.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Second, I believe at the last board meeting, previous to the meeting, there was some sort of a session that took place amongst the board members about our financial condition and what direction things might be taken in. Are there, I don't want to get into a whole dissertation, but is there maybe a couple of summary statements that might be shared, of significance about what happened?
I think the summary statement would be that the budget committee recommended, and I believe the board agreed, that we would take slow steps at first to see how much is changing. We may have to increase the property tax by a small amount. The calculation was approximately $9 on the average tax bill, which is about $19,000. But that we do need to be aware of that and look for other sources of revenue, which we will be doing. But we should be able to remain in the black for some time and not make any major changes as far as additional tax. Am I summarizing? I think I know that's what the committee had, but that sounded like what the board heard and where we understood it. We'll continue to address it more deeply during the coming year, and that's part of why we don't want to react too quickly.
I thought we approved the tax. Am I wrong? We did not approve the tax, we just discussed it.
No, that was the tax levy that was already on for this year, and that stayed within the former rates, et cetera. So we have not done anything new for this year at this point. We will be most likely increasing the telecommunications tax. And as far as that goes, Bob has given me some information on the company that bought us the telecommunications tax to make sure that we get our money's worth, and I will investigate that because that's a big chunk of tax. And if we're able to recover, say, 10 or 20% more, that alone could be an extra $100,000. Chris?
Yeah, I think the message really is that we did a projection of our cash, expected cash revenues and expenses, and we're we are in a good financial position in the sense that we have a good deal of capital reserves. However, when you look out to the future, this gap between revenue and expenses will begin to widen, and we want to make a course correction early enough so that we don't have to make a large course correction later in our 3 to 5 to 10 years out. So it's a course correction. We're in good financial shape. We're looking at ways to increase revenue. Some of those are property tax, which is not, that's not where we want to go first or primarily. Sales tax certainly is important, and as future discussions come at Milwaukee Avenue corridor, that will be critical. And looking at, as the mayor said, increasing other tax sources. None of these should have any kind of impact on the residents in the next year or so. And when they do start, if we do move forward in that direction, the impact to the residents should be very minimal.
And then just one third, last comment, I would like to echo Trustee Ford's comment about the survey. If we are asking all of our residents about their opinions on any major initiatives, I absolutely think cost should be a part of that. I mean, everything's a good idea until you know how much it's going to cost.
I'm in, like as I told the county with the bicycle path, as long as they were paying for it, I'm happy to have it built. If they want us to pay $1 million, well, maybe it's not such a good idea. I have no doubt that financing cost would be part of this at some point. The only question is how early it comes in, and it will probably come in from the start as part of the conversation. But this is going to be a very extensive 3-month campaign to try and get a lot of feedback all the way through. Any other comments from the board? Are there any other questions or comments from the public? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of bills?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain?
Aye.
Trustee Ford?
Aye.
Trustee Hollander?
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, I turned to bills that for hazardous tree removal, just to make sure that if they should be billed to a private party, that we do that.
Yes, I'm sure we will, but we'll double check just to be sure. Council was just asking me if we were going to engage in the next item, which is very controversial, which is the administration of the oath of office for Officer George Futzenritter upon his promotion to sergeant. I wrote a small memorandum to advise the board. I'm sure everybody here knows, but this was a competitive process. There was a written examination as well as an oral examination from a number of very qualified and experienced chief of police from the North Shore. And although we had several good candidates, I think we did get the best, and I'm very, very happy to be able to present to you soon-to-be Sergeant George Futzenritter with the Village Clerk Police swearing in.
That's good. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, George Futzenritter,
I, George Futzenritter,
having been appointed to the office of sergeant
having been appointed to the office of sergeant
in the police department of the Village of Riverwoods
in the police department of the Village of Riverwoods
in the county of Lake,
in the county of Lake,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of said office
the duties of said office,
of the Village of Riverwoods
Village of Riverwoods,
according to my best ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, Sergeant.
Would you like me to take a picture? Oh.
One more.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, there's a question here as to whether we may have given an incorrect impression. And therefore, I want to make sure it's clear, it certainly was not intentional.
No.
The property tax was increased by the normal amount that it has been increased by the Village of Riverwoods, which is within the scope of the former cap that was placed on us. As a home rule community, we could increase it by whatever amount we wish to. But it is increased by 2.5%. Actually, it's 5.5%. Go ahead, counsel, you can say it right.
Well, there's a little complexity to it. We've been adhering to the limits that the tax cap would have imposed on us to the best of our ability, but we have to estimate how to arrive at that every year. I get a check from, but there's a, Lake County checks on the villages by giving you a worksheet that comes out that tells you what the amount you could collect consistent with the tax cap. Even if you're a home rule, they give you this form. They don't give it to you until March, because that's when they know. Most communities are on May 1 fiscal year, we're on January 1. So we're in a position of guessing what the rate should be to be within the tax cap. Based on, we know kind of how the valuations have gone up. We know we have a trend line. So this year we raised taxes 4.9% because last year we undershot, we were below what the tax cap would have allowed. So we didn't. The 4.9% raise is more than technically what cap communities raised this year, let's say, but we think that it will bring us back to the trend line to be basically with the tax cap.
And just to further confuse the issue, because Illinois property tax is one of the most confusing things that's out there. It's not a 4.9% increase in the rate of tax or anything like that. It's in the actual amount that we asked for, which was, what, $20,000 more for the total levy, I think, from 7.
It was a total of $524,000 is the total tax levy, and that's spread out over the assessed valuation of all the properties in the village. So if there's properties that are higher, that are assessed higher, or new properties that come in, it could be that your taxes actually may go down, stay the same, and then may go up a little bit. It's just, but it's at 4.9% of the appropriation of tax. Not necessarily, you're not necessarily going to pay 4.9% more to the village than you paid last year. So, I don't know, does that make sense? It's kind of confusing.
It's very confusing the way it goes through.
Real
because
estate tax in this state is.
It is. The amount that we're asking for per thousand, we don't know until it's actually done, but it should be, since our assessed value is going up, by how much may actually go down. We're still well below our neighbors. Like if we doubled our rate, we'd still be below many of our neighbors, etc. So for the village itself, we'll still be less than 2%. We'll still be just that little edge. Let's say it's about $9 to the average homeowner. So our portion isn't much. It's just that on any tax bill, we hate to raise property tax anything because even a small amount. But frankly, you probably wouldn't even notice it if we didn't tell you. But we're telling you. So your homeowners association will probably raise it more because that board is pretty tough. Okay. The first reading of an ordinance adopting and approving a tax increment redevelopment plan and project in the Village of Riverwoods, Illinois. Council.
We've seen these ordinances before. We saw them at the public hearing we had on October 16th. This ordinance, the very first one in the trio, is the one that approves the plan itself. The plan is the document that our consultant, S.B. Friedman, prepared, which describes the conditions in the TIF district, the conditions that we're trying to alleviate, and gives a generalized budget for how we might in the future use resources to try and correct some of those conditions. The plan is a plan document that's intended to be it's like a comprehensive plan since it gives us a direction, goals for the district. And it's the first document that we have to approve before we can move forward with the rest of the TIF designation.
Do I have a motion for first reading?
I'll make a motion for first reading. Start again. I'll make a motion for first reading.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of first reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We've held first reading. We now need first reading on an ordinance adopting and approving a tax increment. No? Oh, sorry, one line, I'm off a line. An ordinance designating the Deerfield Road redevelopment project area in the village of Riverwoods, Illinois, pursuant to the Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act. Council?
Yeah, so the first ordinance we just had first reading on adopts the plan. This ordinance is more sort of like putting things on record. It takes the actual map and legal description of the district and designates that as the TIF district. We send this ordinance, all of them, but this one in particular is used by the county to develop codes for the property in the TIF district, so it knows that these are the properties that are subject to the TIF process.
So, discussion? Do I hear a motion for first reading?
Wait, so
Yes.
I just had a question. So, because essentially this TIF district abuts the other TIF district, could you clarify for me the borders of where?
Pretty bad.
There is a pretty map. So, so if we add to this pretty map, I'm just trying to get a sense of exactly where the borders are for when we add the additional. The